Hi, I'm Raylene. My sister slipped into my wedding dress like it belonged to her, and my mother just stood there, smiling. No one asked, no one told me. And when Delaney smirked and said, "It looks better on me anyway," I knew this wasn't just about a dress. It was about every quiet dismissal I'd ever swallowed, every time I was told to understand. But how do you keep understanding when you've been erased from your own life? Have you ever felt like your family saw you more as a background character than a daughter? I wasn't even supposed to be there that day. I had only come by to pick up a few baking trays I'd left in the basement. It was supposed to be a 10-minute drop-in, no conversations, no expectations, just in, out, and back to the quiet apartment I called home. But I walked in through the side door and stopped cold. There she was, Delaney, standing in the center of the living room, arms raised, twirling slowly in my wedding dress. My dress. The ivory silk swirled around her like a movie costume, catching the sunlight from the front bay window. Her heels clicked gently against the wood floor, echoing like little slaps to my chest. She looked radiant, of course. Delaney always looked radiant. Evelyn, our mother, stood off to the side, hands clasped together, smiling like she'd just watched a Hallmark proposal. "You look stunning, baby," she said. "Absolutely stunning." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My feet were stuck to the tile entryway like they'd sunk into the foundation. Delaney caught sight of me in the mirror and didn't even flinch. She just grinned, full teeth, and turned over her shoulder. "It looks better on me anyway," she said. Light, effortless, a joke maybe. But no one laughed. I didn't remember walking farther into the room, but somehow I had. I was standing close enough now to see that the neckline had been pinned. She'd already had it altered. Evelyn turned. "She's getting married first, Ray. You'll find another." I nodded. That was the only motion I could trust. Because if I opened my mouth, if I let anything out, I was afraid the whole damn world might come with it. They kept talking like I wasn't there. Delaney spun again, checking the hem. Evelyn fussed with her hair. My dress, the one I had worked 3 jobs for, the one I ordered after months of scrolling, bookmarking, saving photos, was just part of the backdrop to their joy. It wasn't just fabric, I thought. It was mine. For once, something was mine. I saw it clearly then, not just the dress on her body, but the 1,000 little moments that had led to this one. Every birthday she'd overshadowed, every holiday where my name was an afterthought, every time I'd been told to understand, to give way, to let her shine. And I had. God, I had. But something shifted as I stood there, watching her twirl. It wasn't rage. It wasn't jealousy. It was a quiet, shattering stillness. I turned. No words, no drama. Outside, the air was thick with early spring warmth, the smell of cut grass, a breeze that didn't ask permission to move. I pulled out my phone and texted Jolene. 2 words. She wore it. That day, something didn't just break. Something reset. I told myself it was just to check the stitching. That maybe, just maybe, it hadn't been altered yet. That if I said the right thing, stood in the right position, someone would blink and realize what they had done, hand it back like it was a sweater borrowed without asking. But I knew better. You don't bring scissors to something you plan to return. The front door was open when I arrived. I didn't knock. I knew the code. I stepped in quietly, like I always had, like I was still a part of something. Delaney's voice carried from the upstairs hallway. "Can you believe it took 3 seams to pull it in?" She laughed. "I always knew Ray bought big." I didn't move. I stared at the empty foyer and felt something settle inside me. Not pain this time. Not shock. Just the heavy understanding that some things don't come back once they're taken. The dress was hanging on the laundry room door. Shorter now. Narrower. Pulled in at the hips. The lace had been trimmed and relined with a different thread. It wasn't mine. Not anymore. I touched the fabric lightly, tracing what used to be the edge of my favorite detail, the scalloped hem that had caught the light in the boutique dressing room when I first tried it on. Gone. Even if she gave it back now, it wouldn't be mine. Delaney appeared behind me, barefoot, hair damp from a shower. "Oh, you came." I didn't answer. She looked at the dress, then at me. It needed some adjustments. You understand, right? I mean, you're not even using it anytime soon. I smiled, weak and empty. Sure, she blinked. Are you mad? No, I said, just here for my baking trays. When I turned to leave, Evelyn was in the kitchen, slicing peaches. Take some with you, honey, she offered, holding up a bowl. Delaney doesn't like the skin. I took nothing. Back in my apartment, the walls felt thinner. Not physically, just emotionally. Like everything was vibrating with a quiet that wasn't peaceful. I opened a drawer and pulled out a stack of old baking receipts. Flour, almond extract, ribbon for wrapping boxes. All the things I'd bought last March when I spent 2 days making a birthday cake for Mom. I remembered the smell of toasted almonds, the way I'd piped her name in buttercream. How carefully I'd packed the cake and carried it across town. Delaney had shown up that day with a red velvet monstrosity in a branded box. Shiny lettering, plastic roses. Mom had squealed. How thoughtful! My cake had been placed, gently but firmly, on the sideboard. No one took a picture. No one asked for seconds. I brought half of it home, uneaten. I'd told myself it was timing, coincidence, sugar overload. But I knew better even then. They never said it out loud, but I was never the chosen one. I sat on the floor, legs crossed, receipts scattered like snowflakes around me. I whispered it more than I thought it. I was always just the one who brings things, never the one who's brought in. I reached for a blank notebook I kept on the shelf. On the first page I wrote in all caps, "Things they took and never gave back." My dress, my mother's smile. The notification buzzed just after 6 a.m., waking me before my alarm. I rolled over and unlocked my phone, half blind from sleep, already expecting nothing good. I was right. It was a Facebook post. Evelyn had tagged Delaney in a photo with a caption that read, "My talented girl surprised me with this beauty." Below the words was a photo of a red velvet cake. Boxed, store-bought, perfect in that glossy, unnatural way. I recognized it. I had seen it on her counter last year. But I also remembered the almond cake I'd made from scratch. The one with the marzipan roses and candied lemon zest. The one I brought in a handmade box, with ribbon tied just so. That cake wasn't in the photo. Wasn't even in the memory, apparently. I stared at the screen. I didn't react, didn't comment. I just took a screenshot and saved it into a folder on my phone. I named the folder Proof. I didn't know what I was proving yet, only that something in me needed to keep track. Not for them, no one in that house cared, but for me, so I could stop telling myself it had only happened once. Later that day, Jolene called while I was scraping dried batter from a mixing bowl. She was ranting about a work client, but somewhere in the middle of her sentence she said, "Oh, by the way, your mom posted all those Colorado photos. Didn't know they'd already gone scouting the venue." I stopped scrubbing. "What Colorado photos?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Jolene paused. "Wait, you didn't know?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. When I opened our family group chat, I saw what I hadn't before. A thread from 2 weeks ago, filled with emojis, flight info, comments about snow boots. My name wasn't anywhere. Not even a placeholder. They hadn't forgotten. They'd planned it that way. The photos were exactly what you'd expect. Delaney posing in front of flower arches, Evelyn and Franklin holding travel mugs, smiling like the trip was a pilgrimage. There was a group shot with the caption, "Our girl deserves the best." I sat at the kitchen table with leftover pasta on my plate and no appetite. There had been a time, maybe 10 years ago, when I would have asked, "Why didn't you tell me? Why wasn't I included?" Now, I just opened the notebook where I'd started writing things down. The one that began with "my dress" and my mother's smile. I added a new line. Colorado, guest list decisions, group chats without me. I wasn't forgotten. I was erased. That night, I sat in bed and reopened the proof folder on my laptop. Only 2 screenshots so far, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like evidence. Like I was documenting a slow-motion disappearance. My own. I renamed the folder, "The Case for My Exit." Jolene mentioned it casually, like she always did when something might sting, but needed saying. I saw the final layout for the reception. "Looks like they're going with a floral arch instead of the pergola," she said, flipping through a magazine while we sat on my couch. "Evelyn said it was a family decision during Colorado." I didn't reply. She kept talking. Details, colors, caterers. I heard none of it. Just that one word. Family. I opened the drawer where I kept mail I didn't want to deal with, and there it was. An itinerary addressed to the Martin family. But it was postmarked 3 days after the trip had already ended. There were bullet points, floral consultations, venue walkthroughs, tasting menus. My name wasn't listed anywhere, not as a guest, not even as a note. I folded the paper back, slowly, neatly. They hadn't just forgotten me. They had remembered not to include me. That realization sat with me through the weekend. I let it take up space, let it breathe, let it settle. And when Tobias showed up Sunday afternoon with coffee and a casual, "Oh, by the way," I braced myself without knowing why. "Your mom asked if I could give Delaney a ride to that bridal boutique downtown," he said, handing me the coffee. "She said you were busy, so—" I looked at him. "When?" "Yesterday morning, just for an hour. She needed to pick up something last minute." I nodded. "Did you go?" "Yeah, I figured she cleared it with you." He hesitated. "Didn't she?" I shook my head. He froze. "I didn't mean to—" "I know," I said quietly. "You were just helping." That night, Delaney posted a photo. She stood in front of a full-length mirror, holding a veil against her shoulder. In the background, blurry but visible, was Tobias, arms crossed, phone in hand. The caption read, "Thanks for saving the day." It wasn't a picture of betrayal, not really. But it was enough. It was enough to feel like something inside me was quietly being replaced. They weren't just leaving me out anymore. They were writing over me. I scrolled through the comments. Evelyn had replied, "My sweethearts," with 3 heart emojis. I didn't like or react to anything. I closed the app and stared at the dim ceiling above my bed for what felt like hours. If I don't speak, I thought, it's not because I'm okay with this, it's because I'm paying attention. I watched them the next evening, Tobias and Evelyn, talking in the kitchen doorway like they were planning something I wasn't meant to hear. I didn't interrupt. I just listened to the cadence of their voices and the silence that followed when I walked into the room and they didn't look up. Back in my bedroom, I opened my notes app and typed, "I no longer have a seat. Maybe it's time to flip the table." Dinner was already on the table when I arrived, the kind that smells familiar enough to be comforting, but stale enough to remind you nothing ever changes. Tobias showed up 10 minutes later, hair still damp from work, a quiet apology in his shoulders. He kissed my cheek, sat down beside me, and didn't say much else. Evelyn poured wine like we were celebrating something. Franklin was reading the sports section on his tablet. Delaney scrolled through her phone, pausing every now and then to take a bite of roasted chicken. Then Evelyn asked it. "Tobias, does your brother still live in Austin? I always thought he'd be such a good fit for Delaney." Silence. Tobias looked up, startled, then looked to me. I didn't move. Delaney laughed, light and fake. "He's cute," she added. "I mean, if I wasn't already engaged." I looked at my mother. She smiled, taking another sip of wine, like she hadn't just lobbed a grenade across the table. No one said anything for a long time. Tobias cleared his throat. Yeah, he's still in Austin." I excused myself a few minutes later, claiming I had something in the oven at home. No one tried to stop me. In the car, Tobias turned down the radio. "Ray." "Don't," I said. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. I didn't know she was going to say that. "I know." "She caught me off guard. I wasn't—" "I know." "But it was weird, right?" he asked, almost pleading. "It was meant to be a joke. Maybe." I looked out the window. "Maybe." I didn't speak the rest of the ride home. He didn't try again. The next day, a group photo of the wedding invitation layout was posted in the family chat. I enlarged the image, scanning names until I found mine, or what was supposed to be mine. Rachel. My name was Rachel. Delaney had circled it in pink with a laughing emoji. "Mom said this name always sounded better for you." I stared at it. Evelyn chimed in with, "It's just a name. You know what we mean?" I didn't reply. I didn't laugh. I didn't even correct it. Instead, I opened my notebook and drew a line through my own name at the top of the page. Not out of spite, just to see what it looked like. And then I wrote underneath it, "If my name is too much, Maybe my silence will say more. That night, Tobias made dinner. He tried to talk about the wedding, how stressful it must be for everyone, how we should just rise above it. I nodded through the meal, let him speak. He didn't notice I never picked up my fork. When he kissed me goodbye at the door, I smiled. It wasn't real, but it looked close enough. After he left, I texted Jolene. They don't know I'm watching them, but I am. And this time, I'll answer. The guest book was thicker than I expected. Cream-colored, embossed, and carefully curated. Delaney handed it to me at the end of brunch, like a gesture of inclusion. Proofing, she said. Just a flip-through. Make sure nothing's missing. She smiled like this was generosity, like she was letting me in. I took it with both hands, thanked her, and waited until I was back in my car before opening it. The first few pages were exactly what you'd expect. Engagement shots, childhood photos, captions in scripted fonts. Then came the family section. My mother and father posed with Delaney on the front steps. A picture of Delaney and Evelyn at her bridal fitting. A shot of Franklin and Tobias at the venue walkthrough. Even one with Amanda, the girl Delaney picked to stand beside her on the big day. But none of me. Not a single image. Not a single line. Delaney had said it easily at brunch, as if she were reading off a grocery list. None of the pictures with you came out that great, she'd explained. And it's fine. You'll be there in person anyway. Evelyn had nodded in agreement, sipping from her water glass. It's not a big deal, honey. Everyone knows you're part of the family. I didn't ask questions, I didn't make a scene, but something folded inside me, neatly, permanently. It was later, when the bridesmaid assignments came out, that the folding turned into something sharper. We were at another family brunch, the kind where everything is plated too precisely and the conversation feels like choreography. Delaney handed out small gift boxes to each of her bridesmaids. When none came my way, I thought maybe she was saving mine for last, maybe something sentimental. But the boxes ended, and the names were final. When she caught my eyes, she offered a half shrug. You're always so tense in photos. I need this to feel light. I almost laughed, as if my discomfort in family portraits was something I created for sport. Evelyn said, Delaney just wants to feel relaxed on her special day. You understand, don't you? I did. I understood exactly what it meant to be removed gently, with a smile. Tobias reached for my hand under the table. I didn't move away, but I didn't close the space either. We sat there like that, joined, but not together. When we got back to my place, he helped carry in leftovers we hadn't wanted. Then he left. He said he had errands. I didn't ask what. An hour later, Jolene knocked on my door with 2 coffees and a look that said she already knew. I let her in without speaking, handed her the guest book, let her flip. When she closed it, she didn't say, I'm sorry. She said, so? I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I'm not in the book. Not in the wedding, she nodded. I think it's time I stop writing myself into their story. Jolene took a slow sip, then looked at me over the rim of her cup. So, what's the new story? I looked at her, then past her, then inward. Mine. The brunch was supposed to be casual, mimosas, muffins, soft laughter echoing in the 2-white kitchen. Instead, it felt like being slowly buried under a tablecloth made of expectation. Delaney had printed place cards. Of course she had. She passed them out like trophies, naming her bridesmaids one by one. Amanda's name was the last she called. Amanda. It landed like ice water on my skin. She stood up with a too loud cheer and hugged Delaney like they'd been sisters since childhood. When she turned toward me, she smiled. The kind of smile you give someone when you're pretending you never made their life hell. She once called me a ghost with fat ankles in the hallway of our high school. I hadn't seen her since graduation, and now she was standing next to my sister in the most expensive dress in the room. Delaney caught my eye. We reconnected last year, she said, shrugging. She's got amazing energy now. Amazing energy. Amanda looked at me, paused. So good to see you, Raylene. I didn't respond, just nodded slightly and returned to my croissant, which tasted like sand. The rest of brunch was noise, background clatter, fake laughs and filtered light. Later that night, I was at the family house again. Why, I still don't know. Something about a box of table runners Delaney insisted I should help sort. I didn't argue. I showed up, sat at the edge of the dining table, and listened as Evelyn and Franklin spoke in the kitchen. "I'm glad we had enough for that bracelet," he said. It looked perfect on her wrist. Evelyn lowered her voice, but not enough. "Raylene wired some money last month, remember? I just used the difference." There was silence, then a soft clink of glasses. "She's family," Evelyn added, "and Raylene understands what it means to be the older daughter." I stood up, walked to the laundry room, picked up the runners, left without a word. I wasn't funding a wedding, I was funding my own erasure. At home, I sat on the floor, laptop open beside me. Jolene had sent me the link to the wedding venue's maintenance records the week before, just in case. I pulled it up, looked at the layout, looked at the central fountain, measured the distance to the arch. Then I downloaded the blueprint and forwarded it to Jolene with a subject line that read, "Revenge is logistics." I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I'd just come back to grab my phone charger and overheard them through the half-open kitchen window. "She knows she's not really part of the planning," Evelyn said, her voice low but easy. "And being the eldest means knowing when to step aside." Delaney didn't argue. She just hummed her agreement like it was gravity, not cruelty. I stood on the back steps, listening to the clink of cutlery and laughter coming from a house that never felt mine, even when I lived in it. It wasn't neglect anymore. It was justified abandonment. That evening, a photo popped up in the group chat. Jolene had warned me not to open it, but I did anyway, a canvas preview for the wedding. "Family centerpiece," the message read. The image showed everyone: Mom, Dad, Delaney, Tobias, Amanda, even Aunt Sharon from New Jersey. I wasn't in it. The caption under the photo, "The whole gang." No one mentioned the missing piece. No one tagged me. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. Then I blinked it away, saved the photo to my growing folder of proof, and turned off notifications for the thread. Later, while checking Instagram, I noticed Evelyn's profile picture had changed. It was the same photo. Same smiles. Same empty space where I should have been. The caption? "My everything. My world." No text, no email, no call. Just that. I closed the app and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket I'd outgrown but never replaced. I wasn't even angry anymore. Anger needed friction. I was way past that. I sat at my kitchen table, the only light coming from the laptop screen. I opened the folder where I'd stored screenshots, half-finished sentences, receipts from cakes never eaten. Then I opened the file labeled Plan B. I stared at the blueprint of the venue, the placement of the floral arch, the proximity of the fountain to the head table, the maintenance schedule Jolene had sent. It was all there. They didn't just forget me. They replaced me. I whispered aloud, the only sound in the room, "Let's see if I'm really invisible when the sprinklers turn on." The music was playing when I arrived, something soft and string-heavy drifting from the garden speakers. Laughter spilled out of the tent in waves, like the breeze had been told to carry it farther than necessary. I parked far away, on purpose. I didn't want anyone to notice me walking in. I wasn't wearing black or anything dramatic, just a navy dress, simple, clean, the kind of thing you wear when you want to be invisible but still feel whole. I didn't sign the guest book. I didn't ask where to sit. I didn't sit. I walked the perimeter, hands in my coat pockets even though it wasn't cold. The photo canvas was propped near the reception entrance, just like they'd planned. Everyone beaming. No space left where I could have been cropped in later. I stood in front of it longer than I should have. Not because I wanted to be part of it, but because I finally accepted that I wasn't. I was never meant to be part of their picture. I just stopped forcing myself into the frame. When I reached the back of the venue, I passed the catering staff setting up champagne. One of them smiled politely. I nodded, and then I saw her purse, left unattended near the family table. I slipped the envelope inside. No ceremony, no hesitation. Inside was a printed photo, my wedding dress hanging in the original boutique fitting room. No caption, just a single note taped behind it. "You didn't take a dress. You took the only version of me that still tried." I didn't stay to see her find it. I didn't need the drama or the gasp or the inevitable deflection. I already knew the apology wasn't coming, but I also knew I didn't need it anymore. Outside the gates, Tobias was leaning against his car, holding 2 coffees. He handed me one. I took it. No questions asked. Jolene's text came through right after. You did it. You didn't become them. I typed back, no, I became me. We drove in silence for a while, the kind that doesn't feel heavy anymore. At home, I kicked off my shoes, peeled off the dress, and slipped into something soft. Something mine. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling without meaning to. Reflex. Muscle memory. Evelyn's profile had changed. No more wedding photo. Just a single flower. Caption. Quiet morning. I stared for a while, but didn't save it. Then I closed the app and opened a new document. Title, New Traditions. Link to next chapter. She closed the file and whispered to herself, this time, the story starts with me. Maybe your story doesn't look exactly like mine. Maybe your dress wasn't taken. Maybe it was your voice, your space, your worth. Quietly pulled away until you started to believe you never had it to begin with. But let me tell you something I had to learn the hard way. Walking away isn't weakness. Choosing peace over permission isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you'll ever do. I didn't leave with a bang. I left with clarity. And if you're sitting in silence feeling erased, I hope this story reminds you, you were never the problem. You just outgrew the space they kept trying to shrink you into. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever been left out so quietly you almost forgot to protest? If this story touched you in any way, let me know by dropping a 1 in the comments or telling me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, I'd still love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done differently? And hey, if you want more stories that speak straight to the heart, don't forget to subscribe. You never know when the next one might be your story.